Hi, and thank you for joining me for Baby Bites, where I share little bites of knowledge that can have a big impact on your postpartum. Today we're going to talk about the first 48 hours after birth, and I feel like this is a time that can really catch parents off guard. And time again, when we do our in-home meeting with our doula clients, we're told, oh my gosh, like I put all this prep into labor and birth, but I did not realize how intense those first 48 hours after birth were going to be. So I'm trying to take some initiative and really reach out to families to do some digging and some thinking and some planning so that we can make the first 48 hours a little bit more manageable. So we've done the labor, we have the baby, everybody's doing well, things are beautiful. And for those first 24 hours, your baby is probably going to be very sleepy, totally normal. I always say the first 12 hours, if you're trying to breastfeed, it's kind of practice. You're working on your latch. Your baby is trying to get the hang of feeding. You're getting the hang of feeding. So give yourself so much grace. Your baby's tummy is super small, like the size of a marble. So a couple of swallows of colostrum is going to be completely sufficient to give them adequate nutrition and hydration. So really give yourself grace for those first 12 to 24 hours. You're really just learning breastfeeding. And like I said, baby's very sleepy during this time. It's kind of a time that you both get to kind of catch up on some rest usually. And again, as always, please take this with a grain of salt. Not every baby or every postpartum or every journey is going to look the same. This is just general patterns that I see after doing this work for a couple of years with families. But that first 24 is kind of like I would say like restful golden period where you can kind of learn to be new parents, bond with your baby, and baby is generally pretty agreeable. Now that second night, there is a big shift usually, and it's really tough. And this is the part where parents think that something is wrong. Either they're not giving the baby enough food, they're not breastfeeding adequately, baby's colicky. And it's just that second day and that second night is a really hard time. I think about it as that is the first time your baby is like really becoming cognizant of the fact that they're not inside. They're not temperature controlled 24/7. They're not, just passively getting nutrition and food, that there are like real world external feelings. So, temperature changes, sound, light, stimulation, and they have to eat. And they're feeling hunger for the first time. And they're not hearing and smelling you all the time. I have parents who tell me for that second night or that, 24 to 48 hour period that, they couldn't set their baby down without their baby crying. And I always tell them, like, they have heard your heartbeat and your voice and felt your breathing patterns and smelled your smells, like through the amniotic fluid, their whole lives. And this is really the time where I feel like they have woken up enough to realize that their environment has changed. And it's not necessarily that they're starving. Because I have a lot of parents say, oh, my baby was just cluster feeding this whole time. If they weren't at the breast, they were unhappy. And I tell them it's not always about the eating. So think about when a baby is breastfeeding. They're typically skin to skin. Your breasts produce a substance that smells and tastes like the amniotic fluid, so it's a familiar sense. They're hearing your heartbeat, which is what they've been hearing for the past 9 months, and they're warm and temperature regulated. So being on your chest breastfeeding is as close to being back inside as they can get. So sometimes it's less about the feeding and more about that environment. So feel free, if they have been eating and they shouldn't in theory be hungry, to just do kangaroo care. So skin to skin on your chest with a blanket over, from their shoulders down. I like to tuck it under my arms to be like really nice and tight and just have them on you like that. And that sometimes can recreate that feeling without you having to feel like you're constantly breastfeeding. The cluster feeding also, serves a purpose to try to help bring in our milk supply. But really at that point, if you're feeling probably sore and you don't want to necessarily have to feed them when they don't actually need to eat, you can try that trick of the kangaroo care, because that might just be all that they need. I also find bringing a white noise machine to the hospital, one of the little portable ones, can be really helpful, because again, they were getting so much sound inside, and now that they're outside, the sound input is much less, and that can feel, hard for them to relax during. So a white noise machine is excellent. Really utilizing the swaddle and getting the swaddle down so they feel all warm and toasty and have that sensory input from the outside can be really helpful. But just remembering that second day period of time is really short, and it's going to feel really hard, and it's really, really normal. So setting up those expectations that it's not always going to stay like that. It's going to get better over the next couple of days, and that you are not doing anything wrong, and your baby is not unhappy or not being taken care of properly. It is just a very normal physiological process to have a really hard second night and sort of second day of life, and that is normal and it's temporary. And please feel free to reach out to your nurse if you're still in the hospital, your doula, your care providers, to chat and say like, hey, is this normal? Can you answer some questions? Can you talk to me about this? And any of us should be happy to kind of walk you through that and re-explain the expectations, and that you're not doing anything wrong, that second night is just hard. You don't have to take my word for it. You can look it up. Some people even call it like the second night curse. I don't think it's that extreme, but it's well documented that it's just a difficult period of time, and it's totally normal, and to give yourself grace and time to cope with that when you're also learning to become new parents and recover from childbirth. So again, thank you for joining me for Baby Bites. Please reach out if you have any questions. Thanks.